Today we're going to learn to solve by factoring. So obviously you're going to have to get that factoring mastered. To solve by factoring, you can use it any time that you can factor something, but of course we can't always factor, so it's not always going to work. Most of the time we're going to factor quadratics, which are going to be written in this form: ax squared plus bx plus c. And the problem is, if I'm trying to solve that and I try to get the x by itself, is it possible for me to get the x by itself? Not without doing something else, which is why we're going to use factoring. So write down the steps. First, you're going to rearrange the equation so that the right side is 0. Then you're going to factor the left side, and then set each factor equal to 0, and then you're going to solve. So really, this isn't anything new that what we've done before. You're basically just going to factor, and then you're going to set each factor equal to 0. And when I say set each factor equal to 0, I mean if I had x plus 3 times 2x minus 1 equals 0 as my factors, I'm going to get two answers. I'm just going to set each thing equal to 0. So I'm going to get x plus 3 equals 0, so the answer is negative 3. And then 2x minus 1 equals 0, so the answer is 1/2. So you're really just adding one step to the things that we already know. So let's look at an example. So first thing you have to do is make one side 0. So I'm going to rearrange this so that I have one side 0. So I'm going to move the 5 to the other side, which means I'm going to have to make it negative. So I get 6x squared plus 7x minus 5 equals 0. Then, like I said before, I can't get the x by itself. I've got two terms with x's in them. So that's when we decide to factor. So this is a what? A trinomial. So remember, when we have a trinomial, we multiply the first thing times the third thing. So I'm going to get negative 30x squared. Now I want factors of negative 30x squared that are going to add to give me a 7x. So I think of factors of 30. And I'm going to see that 3 and 10 can give me a 7. But since I want it to be a 7x, I'm going to put an x on each thing. And then I want it to be a positive 7, so I'm going to make it plus 10 and minus 3. Because minus 3x plus 10x will give me the 7x here in the middle. So now I want to change that to a 4 term. So I'm going to bring my 6x squared down, put it in front, bring my minus 5 down on the other side. Now I'm going to do grouping. So what's in common in these first two? 3x. And what's left is 2x minus 1. Don't forget that when you divide negative 3x by 3x, that you're going to get 1. So you have to put negative 1, not just that it cancels. Some students thought it canceled and it went away. Now, since this is plus, I'm going to continue with plus. And what's in common in both? A 5. So I'm going to take 5 out, and I get 2x minus 1. And then notice I have these two factors that are the same, 2x minus 1 and 2x minus 1, so I'm going to put that factor out in front. Now I'm going to look at what's left, so when I divide this by 2x minus 1, I'm going to be left with 3x. And then when I divide this one by 2x minus 1, I'm going to be left with plus 5. And then remember, this is all equal to 0. So now I know that I'm just going to set each thing equal to 0 to get my answers. So one answer is 2x minus 1 equals 0. So x is 1/2. And 3x plus 5 equals 0. So x equals negative 5/3. Notice that this equation was a degree 2, so I ended up getting 2 answers. That won't always happen, but a lot of times you're going to find whatever the degree is, that's how many answers you're going to end up with in the end. So still, factoring is going to be important. Like I said, it won't go away. It's going to be something you're going to have coming up again and again. So let's look at another example. So first I'm going to rearrange it so that one side's 0. So I'm going to move the 48x to the other side. And of course, when I take it to the other side, it's going to become negative. Now this time I don't have a trinomial. So I'm going to start off with my first step of factoring, which is what's in common in both. 3x. So I put 3x in front, and then what's left over? X squared minus 48x divided by 3x is going to give me 16 equals 0. Okay, so the 3x stays out in front. Now, is this done or is this special? Well, these are both squares, right? So it's special. So I'm going to do binomial times binomial. And I see that I'm going to have x and 4 and 4, because 4 times 4 will make 16. One's minus and one's plus equals 0. So now I'm going to get 3x equals 0. So that means x is 0. And then x minus 4 equals 0. So x is 4. And x plus 4 equals 0. So x equals negative 4. Now this one is a degree 3. So notice that this time we got 3 answers. Next one. First thing I'm going to do is move these over to the other side, so they're going to become negative. So I'm going to get 2x cubed minus 7x squared minus 9 minus 9x equals 0. Now I want to get, I have a trinomial, but what's the first step of factoring? I always have to ask myself what's in common in all, and there happens to be an x in all three. So I'm going to take out an x, and I'm left with 2x squared minus 7x minus 9 equals 0. So this is a trinomial, so I'm going to try and factor it. So 2x squared times negative 9 is negative 18x squared. And I want factors of negative 18x squared that are going to give me a negative 7. So that would be a 9 and a 2, and I'm going to have x's on there to make a 7x. And it's going to be actually minus 9 and plus 2, because that'll give me the negative 7 in the middle. Then I'm going to bring down my 2x squared to turn it into a 4 term, bring down my minus 9. And what's in common in both? An x. So I'm going to get 2x minus 9. And then I put plus because this part right here was plus. Now I want to see what's in common. Well, there's nothing, but 1 is always in common. So I'm going to take out a 1. So my factor that's common is 2x minus 9, so I put that in front. And then what's left over is x plus 1. Then I have to remember up here, remember I took out an x, so there was still an x in the front. So this one will also have 3 answers. It's also a cubic equation, so it's going to have 3 answers. So I'm going to get x equals 0, and then 2x minus 9 equals 0. So I'm going to end up with x equals 9 halves. And then x plus 1 equals 0. So x equals negative 1. So this is 1 answer, 2 answers, and 3 answers. So it's a degree 3, so again we have 3 answers. And the last one, first I'm going to rearrange it. So I get 25x squared minus 81 because I moved it to the other side. Is there something in common in both? No. So I say, well, is it special? Yeah, these are both squares. So I'm going to get a binomial times a binomial. And what squared gives me 25x squared? 5x. What squared gives me 81? 9. I'm going to make 1 minus and 1 plus. Then I set them equal to 0. So 5x minus 9 equals 0. So 5x equals 9. So x is 9 fifths. And then 5x plus 9. So I get 5x equals negative 9. Divide by 5. So x equals negative 9 fifths. And again, we have 2 answers this time because it's degree 2. So generally that means we're going to have more than 1 answer. So factoring is just one way that we can solve these types of equations.